Welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com is our email address. You can find the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, etc. And on our website, FloTrack.org/FloTrack I'm Kevin. He's Lincoln. We are still remote. We haven't seen each other in person for, what would it be now,
It's
Lincoln? 9 months?
No, you came over to my old house and dropped over a microphone, which no longer works. To signify the passage of time. That's been 7 months ago, I think. So it's been a while. Yeah, it's been a bit.
I dropped that off with an 8-track player and a Sega CD console. And
exactly.
Those were new inventions at the beginning of all this.
Yeah, at that time they were.
We have the official list from World Athletics on their Athlete of the Year nominees going 10-1.
Right.
I thought that they would just fast forward because the year was short and just go right to top 3, but we're still getting the top 10 on each, Lincoln.
Necessary. And it's certainly what everyone, especially over here in the United States, what everyone's talking about. Who are we picking right now? Where we got to count the votes, figure out who's in, who's out when it comes to the World Athletics Athlete of the Year. That's what everyone's jostling about these days.
However, we're still going with it. We're still doing content because of this. So we're going 10-1 on both. You made your list. I made my list. And now we can argue about them. Does that sound good?
Yeah. That sounds good.
I have some strong takes about people I didn't really think that much about this year because I thought, I had a decent season. I didn't think that person had one of the 10 best seasons of the year. But because the way the season went, those people have been thrust into the conversation for Athlete of the Year.
Exactly. Yeah, there are some names on there that are like, did they just decide this in haste and just pick some familiar names and toss them in there because they've been successful in past seasons? That's the way I feel about some athletes here. But yeah, we can compare lists and see where we differ.
Yeah, I thought that adding Bolt to it just to see if anybody was paying attention was a savvy move on their part.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the number 11, actually. If one less good performance from Timothy Cheruiyot, and he would have been bumped by Usain Bolt, who all he's done this year is tweet and contract the coronavirus at his birthday party. So it was a tough year for him, but he didn't, in fact, make the cut.
So we'll go 10 down to 1. You want to start with the men first?
Sure.
Okay.
You want me
coming
to go?
in at number 10? Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure. You just tell me your 10, and then if they match up, then they match up, and if not, then I'm sure we won't be that far off.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping so. I have Daniel Stahl, number 10. He lost a couple times, which is abnormal for him. I need him to be close to perfect for me to be high on his season. That's just the standard he'd set. And overall, just he didn't have anything memorable to my eyes. He did throw a world leading mark, but who cares about that? Yeah, it just not a very unmemorable season from him in my estimation.
Wow, ringing endorsement for Mr. Stahl. I'll make sure next time you see him at the Knick Zone, you tell him that.
All 6'7", 200, well, probably 300 pounds.
There's 4 Lincolns for every one Danny Stahl.
Yeah,
that is exactly appropriate equivalent.
Yeah.
I also went number 10, Danny Stahl, and the thing that jumped out to me again was the losses in his event here. Number 9, I'll go 9. We might diverge here. I went Timothy Cheruiyot. Who did you go with?
Mm-hmm. I put Noah Lyles in that spot. He would have been higher if he really would have run 1890. I don't know for you. He would have actually done that at the what was it? Not the Impossible Games, but the Inspiration Games. I would have had him higher. I don't know. He lost like in the 100 a couple times. I thought maybe there was a chance for him with Coleman absent to kind of like show that he could be the class of the 100, and he didn't really emerge in that way. Now, who knows? Maybe he was just trying to stay healthy, and also, there were points in the season where he didn't have access to a track. So, I will apologize for some of his performances, but he doesn't deserve to be high on this list. It's just he mostly relaxed this year and just clearly put all his eggs in the 2021 basket, stay healthy, run a couple tune-up races, but nothing more, nothing less. So Lyles for me is number 9, but I have Chariot coming closely where you put him. So I can understand that. He did lose in that remote race in the Impossible Games during the inclement weather, but otherwise he was solid in the 1500.
Yeah, he had one run that was notable. He had the 328 in Monaco, and then he had a 330 in Stockholm. He had a 334 in Nairobi. He ran that 2000, which I'm not counting because it was in the wind and the rain, and he ran an 800 where he got 8th. There wasn't much there. I had Lyles in the next spot down at number 8. Okay. You said a couple losses in the 100. Are you counting one of the ones where he got beat by somebody in a different heat? Is that because I'm only seeing one loss? He ran 10:04 on July 24th. That's the only loss on his on the record that I'm seeing, unless you're counting split heats or split finals or whatever those things were. But in any event,
forgive me for not remembering the Joe Schmo Invitational and not having my facts straight. All these meets, these small meets that they were forced to run, it was hard to keep track of things. In my memory, I had him losing a couple times, but I thought he lost to Trayvon Bromell, maybe head to head in a heat, but I could be wrong about that. It just
I think that's
okay. That was different.
Yeah.
It underscores how unmemorable it was, though. It just wasn't. He didn't do any other than the 1890. That wasn't. It wasn't a memorable season for him.
Right, and in the 19.7, we have to give weight to the 19.7. The 100 that you're talking about, Bromell ran a wind legal 990, and Lyles ran a windy 993. That's the one that I think you're thinking of. Any event, it's not important. He goes 993, 1004, 993, but both the 993s were wind aided, and then a 1005, which was wind legal. The 200s, 1994, 1976, and then 20.13. I think you could compare his season pretty similarly to Chariot's in that they had the one big performance, but everything else was just average for them. Number 7. Who do you have number 7?
Let me check my notes. I'm already forgetting. I have Brazier.
Same. Wow.
Yeah. He obviously his season was shortened. He stopped after Stockholm. I thought maybe he had a chance to run off, some momentum after Monaco, and it's just seemed like I think he picked up like a slight injury at that point. So anyways, he did run the 143-1, I believe, in Monaco, and he was really nice in the friendlies, the big friendlies, the not so friendlies, whatever those were called. He ran that impressive 335. But compared to the men above him, he was done when they were still competing. And, he didn't PR in the 800. So it's a high bar, but, Brazier had a nice but not spectacular season.
I think he could have moved up a little bit. There was definitely a ceiling to him when you have the top 4 that we had this year, but he could have moved up a little bit if he continued his season. We talked about that, how he had a little bit of an injury towards the end, so he erred on the side of caution and ended it. If he had broken that 600-meter world record, maybe running a different 1500. The 1500 is impressive from the perspective of, this is a guy who's not a 1500-meter runner, he's the best 800-meter runner in the world, and we're seeing his range and seeing how easy he ran it. But you don't get points for running with ease. You get points for your time, and a 335
unless it's still a championship or something. Yeah, but not.
Yeah, but we're talking about Timothy Chariot, who just ran 328, or Jakob Ingebrigtsen. By the way, not on this list.
Yeah. I was very confused. I'm actually I actually have no idea. Maybe there's too many distance runners. There's only 3 distance runners on here. I was very confused by that because Ingebrigtsen had a very nice season. Now he was beaten by one of the guys on this list, or he's beaten by multiple guys on this list.
Yeah.
But still, I was confused by that.
Yeah, you talk about overall season though. He had a pretty good 2020 with Brazier. Maybe if some of those things happen, he finishes 5th, but there really wasn't much more for him to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I know your top four. So I'm curious, 6 and 5. What do you have?
I have Johannes Vetter as number 6. He had that monster throw in the javelin, number 2 all time, which kind of came out of nowhere. He sent his PR from like the 94 meter range to 97. It was incredible. So that alone kind of propelled him up close to the top 5. Didn't send him past Jacob Kiplimo, who's my 5th ranked guy, who obviously just at the end of the season here, winning the world half and then running 7:26, 12:48, he stole some thunder from Joshua Cheptegei, which is tough to do in the season Cheptegei had. But yeah, Kiplimo is my first, or I guess my last finalist, because they picked 5 as the finalist, I believe. So yeah, he gets it just on the. No, I hold on.
Did they say 5? This year they definitely should do 3.
5 men and 5 women will be in 5 men and 5 women finalists will be announced by World Athletics.
Oh,
just keep making it fun. I don't. That seems like a lot to me. I don't know.
Yeah, listen. I mean, Vetter had a great season along with that one really big throw. He appeared about 8 times and won all of them, so he had a good season. Kiplimo though did 2 things. One, he took some shine off of Cheptegei for top Ugandan, and he took some shine off of Ingebrigtsen for top Jacob. Both those things are pretty impressive in the distance running world right now, and he did both of them. The world half really catapults him up there, but the 3K time, the 5K, which was overshadowed by Cheptegei this year, was still pretty good too. So I actually had the same order as you. I had Vetter 6, Kiplimo 5. So our only difference right now is Chariot and Lyles. And now we head into the top 4 here. So the remaining people are
top 4.
Yeah, the final 4 here are Cheptegei, Mondo, Krauser, and Warholm. Who'd you go with for 4?
A little bit of an upset here. This was just a rash decision. Not sure if I'm going to be able to explain it, but 4th, I actually went Carson Warholm. I just leapfrogged Ryan Krauser ahead of him. I just feel like there's not as much respect on the shot put as there should be. Warholm, yes, he did run the 2nd fastest 400-meter hurdles time of all time, and he was constantly around 47 low. But he had that one performance in Ostrava, the 47.6. Just, I needed more consistency. That's what people say when they look at Carson. Where's the consistency? No, it was tough to pick between Krauser and Warholm. And Krauser, just the sheer volume of monstrous throws over 22 meters outweighed to me what Warholm did. It was close. It's a coin flip. Neither one of these guys is winning, so it's kind of a moot point. But they were both spectacular, and I essentially flipped a coin in my head to put Krauser ahead of Warholm for 3rd over 4th.
I went the opposite way. I put Warholm in front, and part of that is maybe I saw the degree of difficulty being a little bit tougher for Warholm this year with the lack of competition. Not to say that anybody was near either of these 2 guys, but to do it in a running race is a bit different than doing it in the circle. The number 2 time ever, Krauser had some all-time marks, and the top of that list is obviously different when you look at it historically, comparing the top of the 400-meter hurdles race list to the top of the shot put list. But Krauser, he's still tied with Kovacs, and then he's got 3 others in front of him on that list. So this is about as close as it comes, because both of these guys took pretty much every opportunity to compete. So you can't ding either of them on lack of competition. Or lack of participation, excuse me. So for me, it just came down to the fact that Warholm was able to get into the top, runs the 2nd fastest mark in history, and did it when nobody else was out there. And that 300-meter hurdles world best, I think might be, no, just kidding. That'd be like if Krauser's like, and I threw the farthest 13-pound shot ever.
Threw the furthest softball in recorded history. Yeah, it's tough. They both had 4 performances in like the top 15 all time. It's more of an eye test. It's more of an eye test over a stats test. Obviously, if one of these guys broke the world record, they would be in a different category than the other. But you know, I guess if you want to say Warholm had the second fastest mark all time, and Krauser didn't throw the second furthest mark. He didn't cross the 23-meter barrier. So maybe that's your argument for. I can hear arguments for both because we forget, and they're entirely different events. So it's kind of silly to compare. But Krauser's not just throwing these marks that are winning the competition. He's also throwing close to them too. Obviously, in a 400 hurdles, you don't get 6 cracks at a 400 hurdles like you do 6 shots. Well, it would be physically impossible. But they're just so different events that it's kind of hard. But he's throwing 22.5 in with throws that don't even win the competition for him. So he had a lot of other good performances as well. It is completely comparing apples to oranges. They both had spectacular seasons, and they're both guaranteed to be in finalists.
Yeah, and both of them any other year probably would have won, as we mentioned before. But this year you have Mondo Duplantis and Cheptegei at the top, who broke world records this year, and that was basically the price of admission to get into this top 2. We've been through this before, so nothing changed my opinion. You sold me a couple weeks back on why Mondo should be ahead of Cheptegei. I said at the time I was going to wait until the World Half Marathon Championships took place because I thought, hey, if Cheptegei, number 1, gets the win and number 2 puts up an impressive time, I'd be willing to vault him over Mondo. That did not happen.
No pun intended.
Yes. No, it was intended because Mondo does the pole vault. No. That did not happen. Cheptegei got 4th. He was off the medals, and he fell slowly down to the mat while Mondo soared, much like the pole vault, Lincoln.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. He took a risk, Cheptegei did, by running the World Half as per his World Athletics Athlete of the Year standing. He took that risk, which is something he may never be able to live down because he was really swinging for one of the best distance running seasons of all time. He still has it, but giving Mondo's spotless record and the fact that, I mean, in reality, he has the indoor and outdoor world record, even though they don't count that for whatever reason, even though they do in other field events. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But Mondo Duplantis broke the world record 3 times in my book. And yes, Joshua Cheptegei broke the 5,000 and the 10,000, but it's only 2. So it's 3-2. And then you put in the fact that Cheptegei did lose and Mondo Duplantis did not. And if you want to get into finer detail, you can listen back to previous episodes or an article I wrote where the scoring tables for Mondo Duplantis are off the charts with the numbers they align with compared to what Cheptegei's performances align with. You may not view the scoring tables with any degree of legitimacy, but I assume World Athletics, since they made them, do. So I think that that's going to inform their decision when it comes to Athlete of the Year. Do you see any chance that Cheptegei could upset? I mean, I almost feel like, not that, like, again, I've talked about, I don't know how much people care about this. It's not NBA MVP. I don't think it's that regarded in that high level for these athletes. But do you think like a controversy would erupt if somehow Duplantis doesn't win? Like if they give it to Cheptegei, would this pit the field event community against the distance running community?
Would it be a historic impasse, a big row, as they say? It shouldn't be, because you could understand arguments on both sides. Both folks are so historically good. It reminds me, and it's too bad Gordon's not here to talk about it.
It's too bad.
But there was a Bowerman one year, Lincoln, I don't know if you know about this, where Jerry Lawson and Edward Cheserek were going head to head. And people like Gordon bring up a good point. Cheserek had an amazing season, blah, 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 blah. But Jerry Lawson did win the 100, the 200, and the long jump that year at the NCAA championships. And I know Gordon likes to mention all the people who didn't run that year. But that was a situation, too, where I think you had 2 people that were winners. And because it's track and field and it's really impossible to compare across events, you could have more than one winner at a time. I think so. And some years you can have 0 winners. You could have a situation where there isn't somebody that jumps out completely. One thing I think they might consider is his road 5K record, that 12:51, because you were doing the 3-2. But what's to stop them from throwing the road 5K record? I know that's not held
forget about it.
It's not held in very high regard, and for good reason. They just reset the record last year, 2 years ago, and Cheptegei did it in a somewhat low key manner, given that it was still in the pandemic. Do you think that'll push it over?
That's a good point. I completely, the 12:51 stands out. It's an impressive performance, not like a fluke record. Even if they didn't reset the records, he would have the record, right? This isn't 13:20 we're talking about here. I completely neglected and forgot about it. They certainly will consider it because it was in Monaco, so it's near the World Athletics headquarters, right? It was on their porch.
It's actually 4 loops of Sebco's house.
So it's a different world. What's that?
The course was actually 4 loops of Sebco's house, his garden.
Yes, exactly. Okay, yeah. It's in his front garden.
What's your 60-second? What's your best argument for Mondo? And then what's your best argument for Cheptegei? If I put 60 seconds on the clock,
I would put it simply as one man was undefeated, the other guy was not. One guy competed basically the full year. The other guy did not. They were both spectacular, and I guess you could say they both had the same amount of world records. And we look at the scoring tables, and the pole vaulter is substantially higher than the distance runner. And I think you have to award the person who's even his lowest performance, his 6:15 from outdoors, is better than both world records that were set by Joshua Cheptegei. So that would be my argument, and the fact that he pretty much had a full season relative to Cheptegei, who, yes, was spectacular, but raced 4 times.
Mm-hmm. And what would be your Cheptegei argument?
He has kind of established a new, he's like welcomed in a new era in distance running. Not only did he end the Bekele records in the 5 and the 10,000, which I don't think people thought were untouchable, but certainly no one had come close to either of them, particularly the 10,000. And he all of a sudden is destroying these records, 2 seconds for the 5,000 and 6 for the 10,000. And he's the poster child of this new method of chasing distance records with this wave light technology. And some people might look at that as a negative thing, but he's kind of brought in all by himself a new era of distance running. And I think it comes down to which season was more memorable. And it does depend on if your allegiances lie with the distance runners or the field events. But I think you could easily make the argument that the season was more memorable for Joshua Cheptegei, just the records he sought and the how he achieved them relative to Mondo Duplantis. So I could hear that case that it was more of a memorable season for Cheptegei for sure.
I like that. That was good. You summed it up. You should be hired by both to make their case. They should do the awards like that. Every person should get one representative, and they go before the council, and they get their 60 seconds. I agree on the memorable thing. I also think it matters next year. It's almost like they're tied, and we should just carry it over to next year, and then whoever wins it next year. Because especially when you're talking about memorable, if Mondo takes the record up to 6:23 next year, we're probably not going to remember this year too much.
Yeah.
And if somebody else breaks the record in Cheptegei's case, you want to, when you're basing things solely on marks and not on medals, there is an element of this could be temporary, and we don't know how long this is going to hold up. And I know that's the case in the women's finalists, which we'll get to right now. After this word from our sponsor. Just kidding. Okay, top 10 women. Here we go. 10. I have Femke Bol, who probably a lot of people do not know outside of the Netherlands.
Yeah, that's where I went to. I think what does it say? She undefeated? Yeah, undefeated. Unfortunately, there were 2 Americans that did not compete in 400 hurdles. So
Two,
that
two,
clouds 2. Yeah,
20
I
American.
mean, like 5. Her season best of 53.79 would have gotten her what, 5th in the U.S., 4th in the U.S. More a second and a half behind Dalila Muhammad and Cindy McLaughlin. That's tough to rate her too high.
It's interesting. I'm looking at these 10 finalists. You got Bol, Gade, Hassan, Chepchirchir, Kipyegon, Mir, Obiri, Rojas, Thompson, and Yeshina. So of these 10, you have 1, 2 from Ethiopia. You have Chepchirchir, Kipyegon, Obiri from Kenya. So that's 3 from Kenya, 2 from Ethiopia. Then you have 2 from the Netherlands with Bol and Hassan. I don't know who had that,
Right.
6 and 7. And then you have Mir from Great Britain, Rojas from Venezuela, and Elaine Thompson-Herah from Jamaica. So no Americans, but 2 from the Netherlands in here. And then if you include the men's side of things, I guess we didn't break it down this way. Of course, you get Krauser and Brazier in there and Lyle. So 3 Americans represented on the men's side of things, but none for the women.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who you could have even made an argument for. I guess Shelby Houlihan, but not really. I mean, they didn't leave the Bowerman bubble. So yeah, there weren't a ton of performances by Americans that could have generated a top 10 finish. It's awfully tough, and that was obviously dictated by the pandemic, right? But it is surprising to not see a single American woman in this list. It's not surprising when you break it down, but surprising on its face when you first give it a glance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Bol is 10. 9, who do you have?
I went with Elaine Thompson. This was tough. I mean, this was a coin flip to me. She was solid over the 100, but she kind of just came on late in the year, which I know I probably, which I do frequently on the show, contradict myself when I say, oh, they didn't compete late in the season, and then I say they only competed late in the season. So she had some runs. She was a victim of her own success in the sense that she wasn't racing good competition. So if you get to the memorable factor of a season, I'm not going to remember much from the season for her. She ran some solid 10-8 performances, but running against no one who was breaking 11 seconds, it's just tough to be like, wow, that was a spectacular year. When you know that all the other stars of the 100 weren't there.
I had her lower. I had her at 6 actually because
really? Wow.
She ran 7 times, and frequency was weighted heavily in my picks this year. And then you mentioned Smart. She ran in the 10-8s. I know she started late, but there's some people who started early and then ended early. For me, for 9, I went Obiri. I went Helen Obiri because she won a 3K in 8:22, which is that. Are you impressed with an 8:22 from her at this point?
Impressed? No, that's just more of like, oh, okay, Helen Obiri ran a 3K.
Yeah. She ran 14:22 in the 5K, where she beat Sifan Hassan and Gade. So that's like her best performance. She ran a 15:06 in Nairobi, which I'll throw out there. She ran a couple cross country races, and then she got 11th at a 1500 in Stockholm. Yeah. So really, her argument comes down to a 14:22 5K where she got good wins over people, but obviously Gade went on to bigger and better things, and you could even say Hassan. Well, Hassan obviously went on to bigger and better things. Both of them broke world records later on in the season. So they're going to appear on this list, and they're actually going to appear higher than her because there wasn't much for Obiri. So I had her 9. I had Thompson 6. And then 8, I had Laura Muir. Who did you have 8?
I had Obiri 8 and Laura Muir 7. Obiri, just the fact that she did beat Gade, that looks better with age, right? After Gade breaks the world record.
Yeah.
I know she had that.
You need more.
Yeah. No. I mean, and she won that 3K. I don't know. It was 2 performances for Obiri, basically. And then like I said, I have Muir 7, who had some nice 1500 meter runs. Now, granted, she didn't race Faith Kipyegon, but I don't know. It was a nice season. If I think back, Laura Muir, she ran 3:57 at one meet. I remember, and so,
yeah.
I don't the 9 through like 6 range. You kind of was pulling names out of a hat a little bit. I mean, I tried to be a little bit better than that, but these athletes have no chance of winning. It's not like this goes to. I mean, this is a very weak women's side of the bracket, if you will. There were not a ton of standout performances on the women's side this whole 2020 year.
For 7, I went Kipyegon because she was undefeated. She ran 5 times, so more than Obiri. Ran that 157-800. She beat Mir in a K, so she got a quality win there. And I just admire her persistence going after that 1K world record.
She got completely obsessed with the 1,000 world record and kept missing it.
Yeah.
It was tough.
Yeah. It's like, well, you're too young for this, but back in the day, people would organize their iTunes libraries almost manually. It's like staying up till 3 a.m, making sure your iTunes library of all the songs you downloaded off of Napster or LimeWire, like, got in the right folders. That's how Faith Kipyegon was with the. Okay, you're not. I don't.
No,
22 or something like that. All I know is you're 6 years younger than Chris Chavez. That's how I know your age works out to something like that.
Older? So. No, I'm definitely older than Chris
Chavez. Anyway, okay, so Kipyegon. So who did you have 6 again? Or 7? Sorry.
7, I had Mir, and then 6, I had Kipyegon.
Okay, cool. So we had we had 9 through 6. Yeah.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Just Kipyegon, her obsession with the 1,000. I'm not sure what was going on. I would have liked to seen her in a 1,500. I mean, maybe that's too much to ask, but
all those. But yeah, Obiri, Mir, Kipyegon, all of them. You would have liked to seen more of them, or you would have liked to see more of them in their featured event. I think that's
and competing against each other more.
Yeah,
frequently Kipyegon and Mir, that is, competing against each other.
Right.
I don't know what else Obiri could have done. I mean, she could have raced more, but the opportunities were less. And that Monaco victory was solid. Now that I'm looking at it, maybe I would have had her a hair higher, but she just didn't compete that much. So these women are where they belong. I mean, you can argue semantics 6 through 9, but they're not in the top 5. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's go into the top 5. The folks that are left are Gidey, Yeshina, Jepchirchir, Rojas, and Hassan. Who do you have? 5.
I have Yeshina. I have Yeshina's 5. She ran the 60. Yeah, she had ran that 64-31 women's half world record, but she didn't. She did take a hard fall in the world half championships, which maybe she would have been on the podium, but she didn't. She didn't fully back up that performance by finishing on the podium at the world half. So that to me was like, are you a contender or a pretender? I don't know if you're for real. So I dropped her out of the top 4. She's 5th on my list.
I put her 3rd, and she broke a real world record this year. I think we both put more weight when it comes to the women's side of things. We put more weight on the overall world record holder than we do on the single gender world record. So along with her and Letzinet Gidey, those were the real world records of the year on the women's side, because Rojas's triple jump mark was indoors, which doesn't get as much weight as an outdoor world record. So I put her 3rd just for that very reason, on that one performance. Even if she didn't show up for the world half, I would have had her pretty high up, because I think you just have to pay respects to the world record. Yeah, she fell. That was a good race. 5th is a decent performance. She would have helped herself, obviously. If she had won, we probably would be talking about her as potentially the athlete of the year, because the bar was not as high this year. But I went with her at 3. With 5, I went Sifan Hassan because
I can.
Do you want? Okay, so the reason I went, so she gets a world record in the 1 hour run. Congrats. But we don't have anything to compare that to. Yeah. We don't have anything to compare that to. She beat Bridget Kosgei, which is good, but she should beat Bridget Kosgei in a 1 hour
track
run. On the track especially. Now, Bridget Kosgei, very good in the marathon, very good in the half marathon, and this was a distance that was just a little bit less than a half marathon. But Sifan Hassan, as the reigning 10,000 meter champion, should have won that race, and she did. So that was a good, solid race. And then she goes on and runs a really dang good 10K, which I almost would say was the more impressive performance of the two, just because the weather conditions were horrible, and she ran the fourth fastest time in history and broke the European record. So I put her 5 though, because everybody else had a world record that's in front of her. Like a more legitimate world record, I guess I should say, than she did.
Sure. I tend to weight though the 29:36 in the horrible conditions as not, maybe not
a world
record, but it certainly would have been better in much better in perfect conditions, and could have been, whatever it was, 19 seconds faster. Certainly possible, and I don't think anyone would argue that Sifan Hassan's capable of, or is not capable of, breaking the 29:17 world record eventually. Now, she didn't do it, so you have to obviously put that as its focus. I actually had Hassan third. I just really thought that 29:36 was valuable, and the hour run you can take or leave. In hindsight, though, I think Hassan benefited in a weird way from DNFing from that Monaco race. If she had finished and continued to fade like she was, maybe she would have fallen back and finished third or fourth. And we'd be looking
no
at
points for me on that.
Yeah. But I think
if you DNF, you get last.
Kind of in your mind, you kind of throw it out. You kind of are like, oh, it's a DNF. So you don't see the actual number or the result. She could have completely imploded that last K and run 15 minutes and be like, oh my gosh, you can't be in top 3. So maybe I fooled myself a little bit there. But yeah, so my order for the top 5 or up to 3 is Yeshina, and then Rojas 4th, and Hassan 3rd. I don't know. I was really impressed by that 10,000. Rojas did all her work pre-pandemic, which is no fault of her own, but she jumped 15:43 and then kind of didn't do much else. And so I had her 4th, and then, like I said, Hassan in the top 3. I admired what she did late in the season.
Okay, so I had Rojas 4th as well too. So we just swapped Hassan and Yeshina as 5 and 3. I think you bring up a good point. A DNF there should be like you got last, like you got passed by everybody. But even if she stayed in and she got 3rd, but she got thoroughly beaten by Obiri and Gidey, you'd say, well, man, she couldn't even handle Gidey, and then Gidey goes on and breaks the world record. Like we gotta drop Hassan a bit here.
Yeah, that was so my bad.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, she has the hour run, and then she has the 4th fastest 10,000 of all time. But you could see it where if the win was more in your face, you'd say, well, okay, she went on and ran that time in the 10,000, but hey, Gidey could have done that too. She just chose to go break the world record in the 5K. You could have done a swap there and said she's just as good. So you went 5, Ababel Yeshina, 4, Yulimar Rojas, and then 3, Sifan Hassan, which leaves us with the final 2, Jepchirchir and Gidey, the debate that is heating up around the track and field world. I know at the beginning of the season we thought Athlete of the Year might come down to Perez Jepchirchir and Latensipet Gidey, and here we are, Lincoln, on November 3rd, debating it. Yeah,
this feels like only in a pandemic season could these two ever be. Not that they're not fantastic athletes, but when you're not talking about any sprinters being in the mix, any field event athletes. I mean, it's that this is only a 100-year pandemic type of a top 2. Again, not taking too much credit away, but someone who just run half marathons is not going to be in contention to win World Athlete of the Year very many years. But here we are.
Yeah, not even marathoners, because there were no marathons to put in there. So you have one hurdler in here, one sprinter, one triple jumper, and 7 distance athletes. That's what it is for the women. The men, a little bit of a mix, because you got Mondo as vaulter, Cheptegei, the distance, Warholm hurdler, Krauser thrower, Kiplimo distance, Vetter thrower, Brazier mid distance, Lyle sprinter, Chariot mid distance, Stahl discus. So sprints underrepresented and on the men's side of things, but for the women, it was virtually dominated by these distance runners, and in a very specific range from 1,500 to half marathon. That was the range.
Yeah. there just wasn't that same level of creativity, or I guess maybe incentive for the sprinters to one have like a London Marathon type of event, obviously where they make a bubble or going after. And there was some early examples that didn't catch on of going after odd records like the 100-yard, and basically we were bored of that instantly. So the 1 hour record, I guess, just held more weight for people. I don't really know why. Maybe that's just our bias being more distance running, coming from a distance running background. But the distance running stuff just took off more than the sprinters. I think the sprinters were content to not trash their hamstrings this season in a year that didn't mean a whole lot.
When we're talking about people who got left off unfairly, like we did with Jacob Ingebrigtsen for the men, what about Bridget Kosgei for the women? Dominates the London Marathon, was second in the RAK half to Yeshina, and I know she got DQ'd in the hour run, so you can't count that as a result, but she would have finished a respectable second to Sifan Hassan. So 2 respectable sevens, and then a victory in the biggest, most prestigious road race of the year.
Yeah, I was confused by that as well. And she would have been, it's stupid, but she would have been a finalist if not for that DQ in that hour run, which was dumb. I mean, she steps on the inside. She runs for a stinking hour around a track, and we're bold enough to be like, you're disqualified. You were cheating. Like, come on. Like,
womp, womp.
She didn't do anything. It would have been a bigger deal, obviously, if she would have beaten Hassan, and then they would have disqualified her later. But, that went pretty much to expectation. She hung with her and then got smoked when the last minute or whatever took place. But, yeah, she deserved certainly to be here. I could lose Helen O'Beary and replace her with Bridget Kosgei.
Well, no, you could lose Bowl at the top. You could lose Bowl at the top, but the problem is if you do that, then they're down a hurdler,
8 distance runner.
And then now you have 8 distance runners, and it's mostly, well, at that point, what would we have? Would that be? Yeah, there'd be 4 Kenyan distance runners on here, and they want to have some geographic diversity and event diversity on here, which is silly because it's the athlete of the year. But I think she should have been added there. In any event, top 2, who do you have and why? I'll same thing you did with the other one. Give me your pitch for both, and then your pick.
Okay. So I have Gidey second, and then Jepchirchir first. I will give my pitch for Jepchirchir. She won the only global title in 2020. I think that should have a big weight when we talk about athlete of the year, specifically on a women's side, of which no one necessarily separated themselves with a huge swell of performance or dominance. Not only that, but she technically broke a world record in doing so, the women's only world record. So you break a world record in a championship event. I think that holds a lot of weight. And the only performances she had, she broke world records. She also went in Prague in September and had the women's only world record. So a nice run there. I look at Gidey. Yeah, she ran 14:06, but if I'm still arguing on the side of Jepchirchir, Gidey lost to Helen O'Beary. So there's an argument. If you're just taking her 5,000 meter merits, you could still argue she's not the best 5,000 meter runner in the world. So that puts Jepchirchir over the edge for me. For the case is simple though. For Gidey, she ran 14:06. She broke a Tirunesh Dababa world record. And in the same argument with Cheptegei is she's she's one of the guinea pigs, the poster children, I guess, if you will, for this new era of record chasing on the distance side, where you use these lights and again, not taking anything away from her, even though I have taken away from her in previous podcasts. If we go memorable, if we try to go memorable, I think in 2 years people will still say Letesenbet Gidey set the world record, ran 14:06, and there will be a lot of people, even people who follow the sport closely, who will not be able to remember who won the world half title and what her time was. As far as time goes, you're going to remember 14:06 more than you're going to remember whatever it was, 65:16. So that's the argument for Gidey, but I do think the most deserving person, because of her perfect record, is Jepchirchir.
What pushed it over the top for me was the fact that the world half was very competitive. You look at the field, and it was a lot of the best people in the world. Sure, we would have wanted Sifan Hassan to be in that race. But
yeah,
Perez Jepchirchir won over an incredibly deep field. And I think that, plus the fact that she ran so fast and did it again, Gaudet really only had that one performance. For me, she gets it. She gets it. So I'm in agreement with you on those final two. I had Gaudet 2 and then Jepchirchir 1. Not because I'm a lights truther like you are, but just because I think you have to leave room for something other than times. Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
She wins the memorable argument. So that's as far as,
because every half marathon is forgettable. Let's be honest.
Yes.
Name one runner where you're like, oh, their defining performance was that half marathon that they ran that one time.
Yeah, that's true. No,
I mean, you could talk about. Yeah. Okay, yeah, but that's a problem for him. Like,
that's a negative.
That's well, you could talk about people for a while. We're like Ryan Hall, his Houston half, but then he went and did what he did in Boston, and now I think people remember how fast he ran in Boston. So,
certainly. No, that's a problem. But I think it's a perfect summation of the women's side of things this year that a half marathoner is likely to win Athlete of the Year. Maybe the women's side were just more cautious with the pandemic, so maybe they deserve to be applauded, and they're we'll make up for it in 2021. But it's almost like the women's sport took a year off. Essentially, I know there was a lot of men's athletes that didn't appear, but it's just like looking into 2021 and crossing our fingers that we are going to have somewhat of a normal season, even if there's like no fans in the stands or whatever it is. It's like, oh wow, we get Dalilah Muhammad back, we get Sydney McLaughlin back, we get as controversial as this is, but we get Salwa Nasser back, we get Shani Miller-Weibo back. I mean, I know Miller-Weibo competed, and she honestly could have been somebody you put in here as well, maybe for the top 10. How weak it was, but it is kind of like the women's sport took a gap year, and so it's exciting to not to take away from what Jepchirchir and Gaudet accomplished, but it almost this year almost making you forget how good the competition usually is. It wasn't there this year.
Yeah, I think it just stood still, and I think it was a combination of factors, just the way it broke down and the athletes on both sides and where they were located throughout the globe and what events they were able to participate in. Like when we talked to Carson Warholm, it's like, hey, did you want to race Samba and Benjamin? He said, well, I totally understand why I couldn't, because the situation there with the pandemic is different than the situation here. Yeah. But he just so happened to be perfectly wired to do what he did. And Ryan Krauser just happened to be on the cusp of a career year and really took advantage of it. Mondo just happened to be in a location where he could get to all these meets and really clearly be fit because he's on the upswing. Cheptegei wasn't going to wait when he was that good, and all the indications were that this was going to be a big year for him, and they were able to build a season around Cheptegei. What if Cheptegei doesn't have that same connection with what if he's not on the NN team? Are they putting a race in Valencia for him? Maybe someone else would have stepped up and done it and gotten it together, but a lot of that was because of the group that he was in. And next year, 100%. Hopefully it evens out, flattens out. We have a more normal year.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, we almost had a 5-year-old interruption there. Apologies there for your soliloquy. Just busted
you don't
trying to tell him he's too old for this at 5 years old.
You don't listen to the show, but a couple episodes ago with Gordon, I left midway just to blow my nose. So it's totally par for the course. You can just get up and leave if you want, and I'll keep going. But we shall leave it there. Let us know, who is your World Athletics Athlete of the Year?
Who are you voting for? Tell us.
There is a fan vote. There is a fan vote component, so you can vote. FloTrackPodcast at gmail.com. Don't email us your vote. You have to figure out how they're asking you to vote, which I'm not sure.
It's too late. It's too late to mail in your vote to World Athletics. It's too late.
Take it to a Dropbox, folks. All right. Thanks, Solon, for producing. We will talk to you guys next time.